Eventually, everyone pays the piper. This is marketing management. Now, as I discussed in the first segment, pricing is a key part of the revenue side of the equation. Now, while promotions, selling, and other activities aid in closing a sale, the price has to make sense in order to find the optimal quantity in which customers are going to purchase from you. These things have to add up to profitability. Take a second again and think about why you buy the things that you buy. Why do you buy the clothes that you buy? Why do you eat the foods that you eat? Why do you drive the car that you drive? It's because you value these things at that level, and the price is the approximation of the extent to which you value these things. After all, money is just a representation of value. It is legal tender for value. In the old days, back when we were on a barter system, a cow might be worth 2 goats, or you might pay a chicken for a haircut. Now, I say approximately because everybody values things differently. And what we're trying to do in marketing is price in a way that hits the sweet spot, that is acceptable to a lot of different people so that we can optimize the quantity of people that are buying from us. For example, I might value something at $2.50. You might value it at $2.65. If the price is $2.50, we're both likely to buy at that price point. So at $2.65, you'll buy the thing, but maybe I won't, or I'll buy with much less frequency. So the company can only bank on making $2.65 times 1 versus the $5 that it might have made in revenue off of 2 of us buying at $2.50. So the key to pricing starts with what we call the value-based perspective. It's about what people value. Every other consideration is secondary, and let me explain to you why. If we price it exactly what the market values, then we don't leave any money on the table. There's no one out there who would have given us more money, and we always want more money, regardless of whether we're a business, we're a nonprofit, or we're a governmental agency. If we price above what the market would bear, then our Q is going to go down, as I've already shown. How many of you would pay $20 for a Snickers bar? Okay, how about $5? Now, maybe I just got some of you with the $5 when you're thinking about a possible chocolate jonesing scenario where you can't get a hold of chocolate and this is the last Snickers bar on the planet. But most of you are probably still looking for alternative options. That's that Q being less than optimal. Another problem we might face is that, as I've previously noted, it costs money to be in business. We have overhead, fixed costs that are inherent in being able to deliver our product to our customers, in addition to the variable costs of actually delivering those products to our customers. That's a lot to have to cover. So we have to consider cost-based pricing as well. We, of course, need our costs to be below what the customer is willing to pay. This is what we've taken from our value-based approach, and we need there to be some sort of gap in there. That's what's going to create margin and profitability. And remember, simply raising the price to ensure that we're above cost without considering the value-based perspective may erode our Q such that then we're not able to cover our overhead, our fixed costs. If you're struggling to make some of these work in your business, think back to what we talked about in terms of distribution and how you actually manage the services demanded versus the services supplied. Services demanded, again, are what people value. How can you cut your costs back and still provide the value? Is there a way for you to outsource and reduce some of your fixed cost exposure? There are lots of different options and tacks that you can take here in order to reduce the cost so that you can keep that value-based pricing. Or you may simply have a product that doesn't work. And this does happen from time to time. Now, in addition to outsourcing and some other distributional aspects, we have a lot of other ways of assisting price. Some of these we've touched on before, like economies of scale or economies of scope. Outsourcing, as I've discussed, allows you to be more flexible in your fixed cost expenditures. Economies of scale help you reduce your costs by doing the same thing over and over and over again. Economies of scope help you by having a breadth of product offerings so that you don't need but so many touch points to bring customers to you to make a purchase, which again reduce a lot of your fixed costs. Demand inelasticity from your economics courses. There's also a way of assisting price. Why are meds and life-saving medical procedures so expensive? Obviously, it's because we place a high value on life versus, say, the need to have a candy bar. Now, when demand is relatively inelastic, as indicated by this relatively vertical line over here, a large increase in price is actually going to have a relatively small effect on the quantity demanded. Whereas if you have a relatively elastic demand, a more horizontal line on the supply and demand chart, a small increase in price is actually going to yield a very large difference in the quantity demanded. Why is college so expensive? Well, it's because it's the currently accepted path to higher paying jobs in the future. And there are relatively few substitutes for this. Accrediting bodies like SACS and AACSB stay in business by putting their stamps on institutions. They basically signal to the market that this is the acceptable way of achieving a brighter future. All others are providing you with false idols. This makes some schools more valuable than others, and it allows those accrediting bodies to generate higher levels of revenue for providing those services and that stamp of approval. Now think back to that Snickers bar that we talked about before. Is it really worth $5, or might you start thinking about alternative solutions to your hunger problem? Branding and marketing are, of course, major assisters of price. Think about Tesla, Versace, Apple, Callaway Golf, and other companies like that. Now think about why people pay more for these things. It's not because it costs that much more to produce and distribute those products relative to their competitors. It's because these brands have strong images associated with them that have been developed over time. It can also be the case that something that is really expensive is also more exclusive, which makes the people that are able to acquire them feel much better about themselves. Remember, this is all about people's perceptions of self and self-esteem. Sometimes it's the added assurance that a strong brand, brands like these, bring to the table in terms of if something goes wrong, you feel confident that you're going to be taken care of. Sometimes it's because you and your friends come together around these brands and it helps to form a social bond or an identity around your group that's different than other groups. Think about college logos here for just a minute. A key goal of marketing is to express this value to customers so that they feel like these brands were made just for them, with them in mind. So how do you know what a good price point is for a product or a brand? Well, just like many other things, we can do research on this to inform ourselves, and competitors are a great place to start. If we look at our direct competitors, they are figuring out exactly like we are, what's an appropriate price point in this market space given a certain customer base. Think about Coke and Pepsi for a minute. Why are they priced at very similar levels in the market? Well, it's because they're direct competitors and they have very similar products that they're offering to customers. Why are airline ticket prices very similar from the same origin to the same destination? It's because they're all in business to make money as well. And so they're doing all the same legwork that you're doing to figure out what the appropriate price point is. So you can actually leverage your competitors' work to figure out exactly where you should be priced in the marketplace based on the types of customers that you all have. However, too often in competitor-based pricing, I see people go down the cost leadership strategy without really thinking about it. Dude, we're going to be Uber, except like way less expensive. Why? If you can make what Uber makes in terms of margins, why would you accept less money? It doesn't make any sense. Is it really the price that people are valuing when they take an Uber? Or is it the speed of responsiveness and the safety associated with it? Think about differentiation here for a second. If there's already a cost leader in the marketplace, why would you want to go head to head with that behemoth like Walmart, for example? Wouldn't it make more sense to develop a premium version in that same market space and serve a higher valued customer and gain larger margins? There's likely an underserved market there. Think about food trucks for just a second. We're all familiar with the sort of basic low-cost food trucks that'll serve barbecue or tacos or something like that. What about a place in a market space for a double-decker British bus that serves tapas and cocktails? Now, would that be worth a little bit more money? Think about if this came to your locality and actually served food. Would you want to go there? Would you be willing to pay a little bit more to see what that experience is like? That's differentiation on a premium. Now, when you're super unique in a market space, like the British food bus I just mentioned, it's really hard to go out and find exact competitors in your market space doing what you're doing to be able to base your prices off of them. But you can always look around and find analogs. You might actually be able to look at the West Coast if you're on the East Coast serving and figure out what's being charged on the West Coast for a similar type of service. If you've come up with something that's completely new and off the wall, you can still find things, whether it's a medical device or it's some sort of new hospitality service. You can look around and go, well, what is the basic price of these kinds of things out there already, and how do I incorporate that into my pricing scheme? Maybe you've developed a new sport, like the rise of pickleball. You could use other sports, like tennis or racquetball or badminton, as examples of what the cost of equipment for this kind of sport should be. You can then also determine what a premium markup percentage should be by looking at lots of different industries. What's the difference between the cost of a shirt at Gap versus the cost of a shirt at Versace? What's the difference between the cost of a Nissan Altima versus the cost of an Infiniti G35? These are basically the same kind of thing, except with extra features that make one more premium than the other. If you can figure out across categories what this markup is worth, what the value of the premium is worth, then you can take the basic sense of what's competing in your market space and go, here's how much more our premium offering should be worth. As I've already noted, the price that someone pays is largely a function of who's paying, what are they paying for, and why are they paying for it, functional and emotional benefits. But there are also additional considerations that we want to think about in terms of when is somebody paying and how are they paying. When and how often impact the why. Think about seasonality and other types of cyclicality, and even just where a product is in the ultimate life cycle curve. Is it a relatively new innovation, or is it something that's kind of end of life cycle? For example, we've probably all seen summer clothing going on sale in advance of the fall or the winter. Retailers are trying to clear off their shelves to make room for things that are going to make them more money, which is the things of the season, like fall or winter clothes. All of the value and revenue has been extracted out of the summer clothing. Therefore, at this point, they'd rather just take a small loss potentially and get it off the shelves so that they can have higher margins on the things that they're bringing in for the next season. The reverse also happens, of course, when you cycle back from winter into summer. This is seasonality. Same thing happens at year end with car models and cell phones and things like that. When something becomes old hat, it becomes less valuable. The innovators, the early adopters are willing to pay more for the latest and the greatest stuff, which means that it's worth more money and you should charge more money. Flip phones and boxy TVs are dying. And companies that have invested in things like this and they still have them in inventory are scrambling to try and get rid of them at any price point so that they can get some positive cash flow back. It's better to take a small loss than to just throw things out and take a huge loss on inventory that you're never going to sell. This is a key burden of perishability and obsolescence in supply chain management. This is why it's so important to effectively manage your inventory in terms of distribution so that you don't tie up a bunch of capital, later regret it, and have to sell the stuff off at a loss. If you produce stuff and it sits there long enough, then you've wasted your capital. How people pay is another factor that's important in determining price. For example, providing financing for homes and for automobiles increases their accessibility, which thus drives up the queue. Financing also often comes with interest terms, which allows the company to maintain a return on investment consistent with the present value of money for the loan. Another thing, offering free trials or using a freemium style of model is a great way to get customers on board in experiencing the benefits of your product features so that they realize what the value is and that value is ultimately worth paying money for. Taking annoying ads out of my Hulu experience is worth the money. I still haven't quite figured out what the benefits to me professionally are of having a LinkedIn premium account. Now, I can get that if somebody is a seasoned sales professional, the value that would be inherent in moving up to the premium version. But for me, it doesn't make financial sense. I don't value it enough in order to move to the next level with LinkedIn. Years ago, students convinced me to do the free Spotify 3-month trial. So during the time of that 3 months, I built playlists. I found music that I hadn't heard in decades and put it into the playlist. They recommended music that I'd never heard that I actually loved. So throughout this experience, I began to value Spotify. I now pay $9.99 a month in order to keep that service going. To me, it's well worth it. And I'll probably never leave Spotify. Promotional discounts are another price lever that we have. where we can reward customers, we can make them happier, and we can make them more likely to spend with us in the future. Think about loyalty or punch cards, like your airline miles cards. Athleta actually has a really good credit card where when you spend on other things like food or travel or gasoline or other things like that, then they give you Athleta credits so that you can go to their stores and use the credits to buy their clothing. Now, this works for Athleta in two ways. Number one, they get all the fees from those businesses where you've used your credit card. In addition, when you go to buy the clothing from Athleta and you wind up being $15, $20 short or something like that on something that you want to buy, you spend that extra money with Athleta and you think, well, I got $300 worth of stuff and I only had to pay $10 or $15 for it. What a great deal. That's why you value a card like that. Let's talk with somebody who's got some experience in having to adjust their business's prices post hoc.
Well, Dr. Megan Ryan, welcome to the show, owner of Lexington Animal Hospital and the primary veterinarian there.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, kind of interesting, you bought a veterinary practice, right? And so I want to ask you about what is the thought process that goes into purchasing a business? What are the considerations? I know you had some consultants helping you with that decision-making process, but what are the kinds of things that you look at when you go to purchase a business?
So I worked with a veterinary broker who went in and evaluated the practice in terms of the real estate, the equipment, like diagnostic equipment that was in the building, looked at the cash flow of the practice, how much revenue the practice had been bringing in. And then through all that, they were able to say, this practice is worth X amount of dollars. Some of that ended up falling under the real estate purchase of the actual building. And some practices, if you're going to buy just the practice itself and they're renting, you're not going to have to buy the real estate. But so I bought, I actually have two businesses. One, the business that bought the real estate, and that is being paid off over a 30-year loan, kind of like a house. But then the practice itself, and that's kind of getting the quote unquote goodwill, all the relationships, the rights to then pursue the existing clients as continuing on your clients. So, and that was a separate part of purchasing the business. I had to go out and get the typical financing for all that sort of thing, working with different banks. And a big part of what I had done in terms of research was kind of looking at what kind of practice did I want to be at, how big of a practice did I want to be at, how many doctors, how close were the nearest emergency rooms or referral practices for pets that needed additional care beyond what a general practitioner can do, what kind of services was the practice offering, what were the hours that the business was offering. And that was one of the big things that I left the DC area, and a lot of the practices there were open from 7 or 8 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m. and then we're open Saturdays and Sundays all day. And when looking at it both on what I wanted as a practitioner and that what I wanted in terms of lifestyle for my family, I knew that wasn't what I wanted. And so kind of trying to look around, trying to find a practice that was going to fit that, and then also just kind of the lifestyle and of the community as well. So I think geography, not only for the type of clientele that I wanted, but then also just outside of that, for my own lifestyle was important for me and my husband, because he's one of the partners in the practice.
Okay, so when you come in to take over any business, obviously you got to test drive it and figure out what's going on with it. And the primary thing we're talking about here today is about pricing. And so you come into a practice like this, there are thousands of SKUs, medicines, procedures, and whatnot. How do you know what a good price point is and when you need to modify something? What are the characteristics that you look for in figuring out what the right price for something is?
So there's a lot of, different types of pricing that go into that. Some of it came from just experience working in different clinics, of knowing what kind of the going rate for different services were. There's also, you're certainly not allowed to make a arrangement with other vet clinics in the area or even nationwide to say, okay, this is how much this service is going to cost, because that's considered price fixing. But having an idea of, in general, people charge this much for a GI surgery where you're removing a foreign body. So certainly kind of industry standards for that sort of thing. There's also kind of competition based. If you want to be either the low person in your regional market or local market, or you want to be the really high price person. So kind of knowing an idea or getting an idea of what other people are charging in your area. And then there's certainly, I think one of the challenges that was in the practice is that the owner previously had.
So the previous owner had made some pricing decisions, and so then you went in and modified based on what?
So I went in and, for example, looking at a complex surgery that's been done, instead of just saying this is the surgery and putting that as a name, for example, removing bladder stones from a dog. So instead of just saying, cystotomy surgery, I went through and wrote out all the different items that were involved in that, of the pre-surgical blood work, the pre-surgical exam, the placement of an IV catheter, IV fluids, IV antibiotics, pain medications during and after the surgery, getting, the cone of shame afterwards, recheck exam, additional laboratory analysis. So I went through and added all those in. So even if the price was exactly the same, when an owner looked at the invoice or the estimate as to what they were getting, they had an understanding of like, okay, where did that come from? And so they understand the value behind that. So there's also certain industry benchmarks, and that kind of came over time after we'd had our first year, where the industry would say, okay, cost of goods sold should be 40% of what you're bringing in. And so we were able to look at, okay, were we way above, way below, and then adjusting accordingly. And then I think that also played a role, certainly within the first 3 to 6 months when we took over purchasing the hospital, the broker that we worked with said, the best thing I can tell you is change nothing, because people are going to be going through kind of the shock and the change of a new owner. And so the less changes you make immediately, the more comfortable people will be. And then as they get to know you as the owner and begin to trust you, then you're going to be able to make the changes that you want to the practice.
Yeah, trust is an incredibly important factor in keeping clients happy. That's really interesting to think about itemizing bills and whatnot. I mean, sometimes we talk about pricing structures where the goal is to simplify everything so people don't have to think about it. But you've got a different perspective on this, where you're taking, would you say, a cystotomy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
and itemizing all of the different things on there because you're trying to express the extent of value to your customers. So would you consider your practice to have a higher quality image? Is that what you're shooting for, and higher prices is associated with that, or is there a different reason for itemizing?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing that I look at in terms of the practice is I really want to be involved in educating the client, both for preventative care, of seeing the value of it. So I've worked places before where, clients came in, I did the exam, and people say, I don't understand what you're doing. Why are you doing an exam? I'm just here for my dog's rabies vaccine. And so, there certainly are clinics out there or vet practices out there that all they want to do is do all the vaccines for people, do their heartworm tests, and you're out the door. But the kind of practice that I want to be running, and then also attracting clients to, is we have a personal relationship with the client, with the pet. We know them. You're coming and you're getting the annual exam so that we can chart changes in weight, or, changes in what's going on with the animal's heart, or eyes or teeth or something like that, so that we're able to focus on the preventative care. And then, the goal is I can educate the clients so that the pet, the owner sees the value in what I'm doing, and that because they have a better education as to how to maintain their pet's health, the pet lives longer, and the owner obviously has a longer relationship with their friend and family member, essentially.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, kind of difference there, thinking about high touch, high education, getting the clients to see the value and whatnot, being able to charge a potentially higher price point as a function of that, versus it's also a legitimate business model, which, some people don't like it, but to have that higher volume, running people through with a lower price point. And so you've got a higher Q, but a lower P, versus over here where there's, a higher price point, but a lower quantity going through there. And
Yeah.
very, very different experiences, and customers looking for different experiences, of course. So thinking about COVID and how that has impacted so many different businesses, what, if any, impacts of COVID can you talk about in your business, related to operations practices, impacts on costs or pricing structures or anything like that?
Yeah, I think what you said about the high touch thing of having the relationship with people, and certainly that was one of the things that I've tried to do, is instead of having, like when you go to your doctor and then you won't necessarily get a phone call back about the results if the results are normal, always trying to call the owner and saying like, okay, I'm going to go over the results with you, getting back to people in a timely manner. So instead of waiting 2 weeks to get the blood work results, they're getting it within 24 to 48 hours. And I think we've definitely moved in the direction, of having clients who are comfortable talking to me. I'm comfortable answering the phone with them. It's not like, okay, we'll make a note and then a nurse will get back to you with an answer. So as that regards to COVID, I mean, that's certainly, we're not having people come into the building at all. Other than the pet. I am making exceptions for when people are having to make end of life decisions and we're having to, unfortunately in certain circumstances, euthanize their pets, that I'll let people come in for that situation, just because I think it's really important for that owner, and I don't want to make them have to not be there for their pet. But I think that's definitely changed a lot. And I certainly worry that the idea of like dropping your pet off at the vet, and they come in and then they come back out and they haven't seen that we've done an exam. They haven't seen that we've given a vaccine. And I think I've struggled with the fact that I've asked owners to write down like what are the things that they're worried about with their pets so that we can pay close attention. So a lot of times I'll do my exam and vaccines, and then it's kind of in the reverse order that you should from a medical workup, but then I'll go back outside and talk to the owner about any specific concern. So I think, very conscious and worried about not having appropriate face time with people, and so that they're losing sight of the value of the relationship with the vet. And so if they don't have that relationship and kind of that communication with us, then why come here versus go to a mobile vet stand where they can get vaccines, that sort of thing. So I think that's certainly something that I worry about. I don't know that we've certainly, I guess another thing is we've lost pretty much all boarding because no one's traveling right now. And I haven't really made any other changes, or at least I've been trying to avoid making any changes to the practice. I know there's certainly representatives for different industry, like pharmaceutical things, services. They all want to come in and have us make changes or add new services and stuff like that. And I think if we're going to make changes, it should be for the betterment of the patient. Certainly I want to do that, but I don't want to start changing what drugs we're offering or add a whole bunch of things and then people are not necessarily even aware of or comfortable, like, oh, this place has changed so much, I don't even feel comfortable or familiar with it anymore. I think that's the biggest challenge in running a business as a veterinarian, is that we get a degree in how to be how to do medicine, not how to be office managers, not how to necessarily start your own business, that sort of thing. And there's a lot of changes that are happening within the profession. I think certainly more of a movement towards a service-based industry rather than a pharmaceutical base, because you have a lot of competition from online sources. So why go to your vet practice to buy dog food when you can get it from Chewy, or why get your heartworm medications from the veterinarian when you can go to Amazon? And so I think, in the past, I know they say a lot that vets made most of their income based off of pharmaceutical sales, and that is now moving more and more online. And so they've done the services in the past, but they use the pharmaceutical sales to subsidize the services. And so they're now having to really focus on the services that they're offering.
Have you looked at any affiliate programs or anything like that? Because I know Amazon does that, where if they go through your website to get the food or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's probably not as much as if they buy it directly from you, but as an option, and I don't know if you get to this point, but you can make, I think, between 8 and 13%
Oh, wow.
off the sale if it's just directed through your website to Amazon.
Yeah. Well, I guess this also relates to COVID. So we've had an online pharmacy in the past that for people who did want to have things delivered to their house, but I think there's definitely been much more of a push for people who wanted to get drugs or food delivered. So if they're on a monthly heartworm preventative or arthritis medication or something like that, they would get it auto shipped to their house, or they can get their dog food. And so it's through an online thing that we have a relationship with. And so all that ease and convenience and not having to leave your house, not only, before the pandemic, but even especially more, because there's certainly people who, come in and say, like, I haven't left my house other than to bring my cat to the vet, or go to Walmart to do a curbside pickup type thing. So there's definitely been a lot of that. But yeah, I guess that's, another option of something to do. I don't know what the difference between, I think one of the challenges that I have is that there's only so much I feel like I can ask my staff to do in terms of managing outside sources of other platforms and stuff like that. Because we have something called Scratch Pay that helps. It's kind of like Care Credit, but it's basically someone applies for financing, and then the Scratch Pay platform will approve them for certain amounts of money, certain times for payment, and then Scratch Pay pays us up front, but they take a percentage cut. So the vet practice isn't getting as much money as they would have if someone had paid with a credit card, or
Right.
but you're guaranteed to make the money, to get paid for the work that you're doing, rather than someone says, oh yeah, I'm going to pay you, and then they pick up their pet and then never pay you back. So, I mean, we have that. We have the online website or online pharmacy. There's different like insurance platforms. I was just like, I kind of reached my limit of like, how many things do I want to keep track of that everyone's actually doing it properly and not losing track of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options out there, right?
Yeah. And I know that there's certainly been more of a push to having like a curbside payment with what is that thing called? Not Stripe.
Square.
Square. Yeah, but I guess David has done more research into it, just that they take a higher percentage than typical like credit card terminal fees are and stuff like that for a business. And so
Square does?
that's
I
what
thought
David said.
Square was almost exactly the same as like Visa or anything else.
What do you think, David?
I've heard that it's not. I haven't.
He said he's heard that it's not, but he hasn't actually done research.
I mean, we had a Square when we did the whole mini golf thing.
Oh, you did? And it wasn't bad?
No, I mean, I feel like it was 2.5% or something like that, or maybe 3%.
Yeah, our credit card terminals now are hovering around 1.5.
Oh, I didn't realize terminals had gone that low. They used to be 2.5%.
Maybe that's, I guess the competition with what's available for more mobile stuff. And I know that the terminals also, they have certain things that they base your rates based on, like, are you taking payments over the phone? Are you using a mobile source or something like that? Is there, I guess, more risk on their part that whoever's giving you the credit card information isn't truly the owner? So
no, this is what we would call the how of pricing, right? So I mean, this is a completely separate additional issue in pricing, which is about, well, it'll cost you a little bit if you take credit cards, right? That's why people are like, give me cash,
Yeah.
But, different credit card companies have different standards. If you go through a website or, like the one you're just talking about, you're guaranteed to get paid so that nobody's going to skip out on their bill, but they're going to take a percentage for the value of ensuring that you get paid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. There's just so many different platforms that you can use. And those are all just on how you do business with your clients and not even related to doing the actual medicine. And so you reach a limit of, I, I wanted to own my own business because I wanted to be able to kind of create the culture and the practice and have the relationship with the clients that I wanted, and wanted to be able to do the medicine that I think is right for the clients and the patients, and be able to heavily focus on education. But there's the whole business of how do you communicate that to the clients, and then, other than just me telling them that I think this is right. And then also just how do you keep your employees trained? How do you keep them coming to work on time and stuff like that?
You'll have cyclicality in business to some extent, right? So I know there are like dental months or whatever, like months where there are certain things that are the highlight of a month. What causes sort of that cyclicality?
I think so. Something that I did earlier on that I have just moved away from. So the previous owner did a lot of coupons and like saying like, okay, you can use this. She would mail out to clients a coupon booklet and say, this month you can get a free nail trim. This month you can get 10% off this heartworm test or fecal testing or something like that. And I've personally moved away from offering discounts on services or discounts on a lot of services, because I think the discount should promote people to do something that they weren't going to do otherwise. And I think my focus has been more towards educating clients as to why doing something is important, rather than they're going to get a deal if they do it. So I've moved away from that, but I still have kept the dental month, because I think that is something that people will, for some instances, it's not an emergency to do a dental cleaning on their pet. And that by saying, okay, if you do a dental cleaning this month, we're going to give you a discount towards getting that done, because that may be the difference in them doing it or not doing it for their pet. So I've kept that one, but a lot of times for other things, adding giving someone a discount on boarding in the month of July wasn't going to break the decision to board in July. They were going to do it anyways. And it was just, and so it just meant that we were busier and making less money.
Yeah. Higher quantity, less price.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are certainly some clients who really liked that aspect of the practice and were sad to see me make those changes away from it. I want them to do it because it's valuable, not because it's cheap.
No, I mean, absolutely. There's a different kind of clientele, right? That you're catering to a certain target demographic. These people liked this way of doing business, and they're, it's okay to fire clients or to not satisfy everybody with everything that they want, right? I mean, to build a brand, you have to be a thing. And if this robs the brand of what it's supposed to be, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? You build it over here with more education, more information. It's not about deals. You want deals? Go to Walmart, go to, a Banfield or whatever,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the whole bear dog thing of like, Dr. Logan has a great bear dog program. People will go there, get crazy surgeries done. He'll give you a 20% discount, and people have wanted me to do it, like a bear dog program where I basically would be on call for the entirety of the bear season, 24/7, to do surgeries. And then
after a dog gets beat up by a bear, is that what that is?
Yes, after a dog gets beaten up by a bear, but then they also want a discount, but they also don't want to do the good medicine that I want to do. And I think I've probably discouraged most of them, because the ones that have come to me that I have seen, the dog's having trouble breathing. It's got a big wound on its side. I'm listening to it. I'm like, he's got a collapsed lung. We need to take some x-rays to evaluate the extent of the injuries. We need to do some blood work to see if there's any internal bleeding. And they're like, no, we just want you to close up the wound and send him on his way. And we don't want to pay for IV fluids. We don't want to pay for IV antibiotics. Just like, it's all about cosmetic. As long as it looks okay on the outside, then they must be fine on the inside. And
Wow.
I've kind of really pushed back against that. And I think 3 years in, they're like, oh, we'd rather just go to the other vet because he's going to do it cheap. And, they don't have, well, in my opinion, I don't think they have as good of outcomes, because I hear about dogs dying a lot going that route because they're not on fluids and they're having crazy surgeries. But
Well, yeah, but again, they want cut rate, small stuff. You want to provide, high quality medicine, right? Where the dog is actually taken care of. And they're just like, just do the basic fixes, charge me nothing, and we'll be on our way.
yeah, I just want tires that are going to pass inspection. I don't actually want tires that are going to
and
1,000
there
miles.
are people out there like that, right? But
Yeah.
that's not the clientele that you're after. Well, Dr. Megan Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All the best for a happy and prosperous 2020.
Thank you.
As with every other aspect of marketing, be sure to keep an open mind about pricing, to think critically about what pricing levers you should pull and when you should pull those things and why. These decisions should invariably be planned out in advance. It should never be, oops, we made a pricing or demand mistake and now we need to correct for this thing. It should always be on purpose. At this point, we price at this level for this reason. When we come across inventory overages, we change our price to this point in order to draw that inventory down. At this point, prices are okay for our innovators and early adopters, but we're going to have to bring that down once things start to hit the mainstream, and this is no longer the newest, latest, greatest thing. In the next episode, we'll talk about implementation of marketing strategy. Until then, don't be fooled by the rocks that I've got. I'm still Jenny from the block. What's up, world? Yeah, we're going to talk about some marketing management today. All right. I just thought of a new concept. It's to argue with myself over there. So there'll be another me, kind of like they have the drummers and stuff on these Tonight Show and stuff. And they make comments back to the host. And it's like, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, I'm going to make those jokes to myself. But most are probably, let's just start moonwalking. Yeah. All right. Little Michael Jackson there. Yeah. Do some MC Hammer. Typewriter. Yep. Typewriter. Loosen up. Loosen up. Loosen up. Tighten up. Loosen up. Tighten up. We need our costs, of course, to be below what the customer is willing to pay. Willing to pay? We'll be eroding that queue and ultimately sabotaging the optimality. Optimality. Get to the chopper. Get to the optimality. Let's say a double-decker British bus. Talking like Sean Connery now. Some things in here don't react well to bullets, Ryan.